I'm here in Catskill, New York to look at the historically inaccurate embroidery of Richard Saja. Let's go.
It was never my intention to be a middle-aged embroiderer. It just happened. It all just happened. It all came to this pinnacle of what I do now. It's the holy trinity of color, pattern, and texture. I didn't go to school for art. I did a couple of classes at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. Then I get the classical arts education in New Mexico. Then I go into advertising. And then I decide, all right, it's time. Like, I need to have something to call my own. But that thing was actually the perfect culmination of all three of those educations. There's a graphic element to what I do, there's a historic element to what I do, and surface design taught me the basics of making art. Toile de Jouy is a very traditional French textile pattern. It was developed in a little village called Jouy-en-Josas, which is right outside of Versailles. And it was the first commercially reproduced fabric available. And it depicts pastoral scenes and idyllic scenes of people working in the fields or dancing around a maypole or being pulled in a sled. As I was waking from sleep one day, I could just see very clearly in my head a traditional toile de Jouy pattern, but with the figures having like the facial tattoos of Maori tribesmen. And I was like, oh, that seems like a viable, interesting idea. Like with an economy of means, you can sort of change something historic, make it a little more, make it subversive. And so I just adapted the concept to include any embellishment over toile de Jouy. It was originally a cushion concept that has evolved into framed artworks. So it's interesting, it's like when I started doing the fine artwork, all of a sudden I was like, well, this can't be random anymore. I need to start saying something. And I just started embroidering what I found interesting, which was stuff that had been interesting to me as a small child, like monsters, aliens, human-animal hybrids, the normal stuff. There was always this preoccupation with monsters from a very young age. There were always these thematic elements that came up that I felt myself drawn to, and it usually had to do with monsters being villainized. Like, they were always the bad guys, and no one was ever willing to sort of understand them in these shows. It was just like, they're the bad guys, they must be destroyed. And I guess I always kind of felt like an outsider, and I started identifying with those bad guys. They were usually more interesting than anyone else on the show. And the same applies to monster movies. And so that became my personal iconography. And, you know, none of this was deliberate. It's sort of like, it happened over time, and it grew and evolved. And I found like, oh, I love to embroider fur over and over again. So I just took the ball and ran with it. And I've been doing essentially the same thing for 20 years now. People love tradition, and they love it even more now when it has a modern spin on it. The concept sort of nailed those two things for people, but it still has a light touch. People often talk about the subversive quality of my work and the humor in my work. It makes history approachable. It always seems to have this framework of the freakish, the odd, the different. But, that's what's interesting to me. And just to do something pretty isn't really interesting to me. The toile is already pretty. It's one of the most traditional of the decorative arts. So my work isn't interesting or valuable to me if it's not amping it up a couple of notches.